Hello, God's people. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And for our guests, a mindful lesson to all of you. Today's topic is the light of truth. A topic which the light bearers of this world know all too well. However, not everyone is as enlightened and needs to be illuminated on the topic. Excuse my play on words here, but today we will be talking about the Illuminati. Also, we'll be talking about Lucifer. And we'll be quoting from the Holy Bible, the Gospel of Angelus Domini, and the Gospel of the Clergy. Three of some of my favorite books that remain in this world. So, let's first start by identifying who Lucifer is and who Lucifer isn't. So if we're going to talk about the light of truth, we should know who Lucifer is, of course. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, it says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. Lucifer means light bearer. It's Latin. Lucifer is Latin for light bearer. Okay? It's a name and a title. More so, a title. It's a title that was attributed to Satan incorrectly, but in fact, more correctly, attributed to Christ. Listen closely. The book of John, chapter 8 and verse 12. And Yeshua spoke again with them, and he said, quote, I am the living God, the light of the world. The light of the world. I repeat, the light of the world. Whoever follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall find the light of life. Now, reading from Angelus' Gospel, it says, it was all part of a quote-unquote great deception the Bible warned of. Satan making the world think that he was Lucifer. Satan is the prince of darkness. Christ is the light of the world. We, the Ecumenical Order, are Templar Knights, also known as the fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. And we live up to that title. All efforts go towards that cause, and luxury is a foreign concept to us. And Illuminati means the enlightened ones. So all of those who have worked behind the scenes, whether on one team or another, I am paraphrasing this a little bit for the sake of our audience, but whether it be on the light of one end of the spectrum or another, they're still Illuminati. So whether you perceive them as good or evil, they're still Illuminati. And yes, they can be represented on both sides of that. We differ in methodology and in certain philosophical principles when it comes to the difference between the Anunnaki and the reptilians. But we share the same knowledge of the quote-unquote great work, the same knowledge, the same enlightenment, to evolve man and to create a new kingdom, a new everlasting kingdom. Illumination is neither good nor evil, for the Illuminati are simply those who know, those who understand, those who are wise, those who are illuminated or enlightened. But by possessing the knowledge of good and evil, one has the choice to do as he or she wills. So, could you imagine how, can you imagine how a car would look if none of the engineers collaborated with one another, how building a city where none of the construction workers plans together, well, the great work is just the same. There's all different sorts of jobs in creating the new kingdom. The Illuminati and Freemasonry have been the engineers of the new kingdom, collaborating throughout history, so that God's earthly kingdom would be prepared here and now. The New World Order is that kingdom. Those who cannot see the big picture of history oppose the New World Order and the Illuminati, but it is done out of ignorance, and I might add, it is done out of design as a part of the Great Deception. And yes, you do see their signs everywhere, because their job is much greater than simply building edifices. They are building society and humanity into worthy subjects of the kingdom. May the knowledge of the unseen... So, I was about to do a different quote there, excuse me. But it's important for you all to understand that just because one viewpoint may seem like it opposes another, they do tend to work in conjunction, and where they're unified is the truth. So that's why today's topic is the light of truth, because it's better for us to bring these lights together. And I'm going to read a quote from probably the most beautiful book written from ancient times and preserved throughout history, the Gospel of Ecumenical. This is an introductory portion of Ecumenical. One of the keepers of this great work wrote a passage, and I'm going to quote him. "We have never been without the light of truth, yet you seek to bring another light, strange to us, which seems less bright than ours." This is what some people were saying to him as he was approaching them with this gospel, the gospel of Christ. And he said to them, "Let us not argue as to whose light, lit at the fount of truth, burns brightest, but let us put our two lights together, so that they may jointly give more illumination and dispel more darkness." And they responded, "The light of your teachings was always foreshadowed, and he whom you bring tidings is not unknown to us." They're speaking of Christ. "The origin of truth is immaterial," meaning it doesn't matter, "for it stands alone on its own merits." As it does, facts do stand alone on their own merits, don't they? "And should always be welcomed." So they corrected themselves right there. Being unlike men, they should always be welcomed being unlike men, because it stands on its own merits, truth that is. "Who have," excuse me, had to mute that for a second. I'm going to read that sentence again. "The origin of truth is immaterial, for it stands alone on its own merits, and should always be welcomed, unlike men, who have to be supported by their lineage. The lights were put together to become one, and we alone are its inheritors. Do others have 3 guiding lights? And these guiding lights, so that you can identify them, and identify those who are light bearers, those who stand for truth, for love, and for justice." Now you can see why, a little bit of why this is one of my favorite books. I hope you get to pick it up. I'll put a link in the comments below here after we're done. It's in the file section of the congregation, and I hope you get to have a good read. I'm also doing a narration of this book a little bit over time. I think I've only made it to chapter 4 out of 25 so far, but I plan to continue, God willing. With that, I want to leave you with a blessing, which is also written in this gospel. And these were the closing introduction of the individual who is keeping this knowledge in trust. "May the strengthening Spirit fill your heart, the guiding Spirit turn you away from every form of evil, both protecting you from every assailant, and may the comforting Spirit have compassion on your weakness and tend to your wounds when you are smitten by those knowledgeable in worldly wiles. May the doorways of your heart be ever open to admit the light of truth and knowledge, that the inner chambers of your being be so enlightened that you may perceive your own soul in its fullness of its glory and power. And so may it be. In the name of Rael. Amen.